Assalamu alaikum viewers. Welcome to episode 12 of ISO 9001 2015 series. And in this episode, we will be discussing about clause number 6, which is planning. Clause 6 is divided into three subclauses. 6.1 is about actions to address risk and opportunities. 6.2 is related to quality objectives and planning to achieve them. And 6.3 is about planning of changes. All right, so let's see what clause 6.1 says. Clause 6.1 is about actions to address the risk and opportunities, and you can read it with me. When planning for the quality management system, the organization shall consider the issues referred in clause 4.1 and the requirements referred in clause 4.2 and determine the risk and opportunities that need to be addressed. Uh, A is give assurance to quality management system can achieve its intended results. B is enhance desirable effects, which is basically the opportunities, and C is prevent or reduce undesired effects, which is basically the risk, and D is basically about the achievement of continual improvement. So, as I told you earlier, that this particular standard is based upon two approaches. One is process approach, and the other one is risk-based thinking. And risk-based thinking is introduced in ISO 9000 for the first time in 2015. And this clause is basically directly linked to risk-based thinking. Because if you remember, when we were discussing about risk-based thinking starts from realizing and identifying the risk and opportunities. And once we identify those risk and opportunities, then we move forward and take appropriate actions. If it's an opportunity, we'll take actions to grab those opportunities, and if it's a risk, we will try to either eliminate the risk completely, or we'll try to reduce the risk up to a level which becomes acceptable to us. So this is a completely new clause in ISO 9001. Previously, there was a clause related to preventive actions. That particular clause was basically indirectly talking about the identification of risk, because we were identifying the potential non-conformities, and we were trying to take actions to eliminate the undesired effects of those potential non-conformities. So that is basically the risk. But now, in a more direct sense, this particular subject, risk management, risk approach, is addressed in ISO 9001, and 6.1 clause is introduced, and the other clause, preventive action, which was there in the previous standard, that is being eliminated now. So this particular clause is basically the starting point for your risk based thinking. But before implementing this particular clause, you need to realize one thing, that this is not a standalone clause. So, risk identification is not a standalone subject. So, in many organizations, even before ISO 9001, or before introducing this particular standard, or before introducing this particular clause, many organizations were already having the procedure for risk identification, but that procedure was not designed in such a manner that it is connected with the previous clauses like 4.1 and 4.2. So when you adopt these type of clauses, which are new in ISO 9001, but they are already available within your organization in some form, or some mechanism is already established in your organization. So you need to be very careful whether you are basically fulfilling the intent of this particular requirement or not, because this particular requirement is not only talking about identification of risk. So you might be having a mechanism where anybody within the organization can identify risk at any point of time randomly, which is, in most of the cases, this is the situation. And normally, when you have such a procedure that anybody can identify the risk anywhere in the organization, nobody identifies the risk, and many of the processes, they don't have any risk identification. Many of the activities are not having any risk identification. Many of the interested parties related risks are not identified. Maybe supplier related risks are not identified. Maybe the product related risks are not identified. Maybe the customer related risks are not identified. So you need to be very careful when you adopt this particular requirement as a new requirement in ISO 9001, because this particular clause is referring back to clause 4.1 and clause 4.2, and 4.1 talks about the context of the organization. So at the beginning, you remember we discussed that you need to have a team of people who are aware of the organizational context. They should be aware of the organization itself. They should be aware of the organizational product itself. They should be aware of the internal context, that what are the issues within the organization, what sort of manpower we have, what sort of competency we have, what sort of equipments we have, what sort of machinery we have, what sort of product we have. And then they should be aware of the external context, that what are the issues externally which can affect the organization's quality management system and their performance. So maybe the environment might have an impact. Maybe the political scenario might be having an impact. Maybe the legal bodies might be coming up with certain new laws and regulation, and that might create an impact. Maybe the customer might be having certain requirements. Maybe the supplier might be having some needs and expectations. So all those issues, first of all, if you realize those issues or not, have you determined those issues or not? So have you fully implemented clause 4.1 as yet? So have you realized what exactly clause 4.1 is, and have you developed that level of knowledge and maturity within your organization, that the team which is developing this particular mechanism for risk identification, are they having access to all that information? If they are not having access to all that information, or if they are not um, having the idea about the context of the organization, they are not really aware about the internal factors and external factors, then the risk management process, the risk identification process will be completely a waste of time, because you will not be able to address all those factors which are basically related to the organizational context. So this you need to keep in your mind. Having a risk management procedure, having a procedure of risk identification and handling is not a solution if you are not aware of context of the organization, and you are not connecting the context of the organization with the identification of risk. It's a useless activity which you will be doing, and it will not be giving any benefit to your organization. The second thing is, we talked in clause 4.2, we talked about needs and expectations of interested parties. So if you have not ensured that you are having access to the needs and expectations of interested parties, so in many organizations, clause 4.2 is not taken seriously, and we believe it's a very generic requirement, and we address it in a generic way, and we don't really specifically work on that particular clause. So we don't really identify the interested parties, internal interested parties or external interested parties, and we don't really identify that what exactly those interested parties needs from us, and what do they expect from us. So if we have customers, what exactly they are expecting from us. If we have legal bodies, what they are expecting from us. If we have suppliers, what do they expect from us. If you have shareholders, what do they expect from us. If we have other organizations which are somehow related to our quality management system and somehow can create an impact on our quality management system, so what do they expect from us. So if that knowledge is not managed properly, if that knowledge is not acquired, retained, and used properly, then again, your risk management process, whatever you will establish, that will be useless. So it's extremely important to consider clause 4.1 and 4.2, and most of the people who are developing the system, they ignore it. And most of the time, even the third party auditors, when they perform the audits in this particular clause, clause 6.1, they ignore this reality as well, that the standard is asking about this connection between clause 4.1, 4.2, and clause 6.1. So you need to be very careful when you establish the system. And if you are already having an established system, look into it and see if this connection is well established, and basically the risk and opportunities which you are identifying are addressing all those areas which are identified in clause 4.1, and all those needs and expectations which are identified in clause 4.2. So let's read the remaining part of clause 6.1, which is quite self-explanatory. I will not go into much detail and explanation. If you require any further clarification, you can ask me in comments, and I will try to respond back to you as quickly as possible. So this particular part says that the organization shall plan actions to address the risk and opportunities, and B, how to integrate and implement the actions into the quality management system processes, and evaluate the effectiveness of these actions. Actions to address risk and opportunities shall be proportionate to the potential impact on the conformity of the products and services. So it's quite self-explanatory. Whatever risk we will identify, whatever opportunities we will identify, we need to plan appropriate actions, and then we need to make sure that those actions are integrated in our business processes. So normally business processes are the high level processes which are established even well before establishment of quality management system, and people give more regard to business management processes because they are directly coming from the top management. Generally speaking, quality management doesn't directly come from the top management. Theoretically, yes, it should come, but generally speaking, around the globe, quality management is not coming from that level. Business processes are coming directly from the top management, and everybody feels that they are bound to fulfill the business process requirements. So you need to make sure, theoretically, that your quality management system controls whatever you have established to address risk and opportunities. They are integrated within the business management processes as well. Evaluate the effectiveness of the actions. It's very logical. Whatever actions you are identifying against those risks and opportunities, you need to make sure that they are being evaluated for their effectiveness, because if the actions which you are planning are not effective, then certainly whatever opportunities you would like to grab, they will not be achieved, and whatever risks you would like to reduce or eliminate, you will not be able to reduce or eliminate those risks as well. So this is something very logical, which is defined in clause 6.1.2. So clause 6.2 is about quality objectives and planning to achieve them, and this is not a new clause. This clause is there since beginning of ISO 9001 standard. Quality objective requirement is there since beginning. Most of the people believe that they are fully aware of this clause and they are implementing it effectively. But during my consulting and certification career, I realized that majority of the companies are not basically fulfilling the basic intention behind this particular clause, and they are misusing this clause drastically. So let's see first what exactly this clause requires from you, and then we will discuss that why the companies are not effectively implementing this particular clause. So this clause says that the organization shall establish quality objectives at relevant functions, levels, and processes needed for quality management system. The quality objectives shall be consistent with quality policy, be measurable, take into account applicable requirements, be relevant to the conformity of products and services, and enhance customer satisfaction. Be monitored, be communicated, be updated as appropriate. And finally, the organization shall maintain documented information on the quality objectives. So, this is one of those three clauses where a standard is asking about the mandatory documentation. First one, I told you in 4.3 that the scope of the quality management system must be documented. And then in clause 5.2, I told you that quality policy must be documented, and this is the third place where a standard is talking specifically about the documentation. Rest of the documentation, 99% documentation, which your organization requires, that is left to your discretion, that how you want to identify and how you develop that documentation. Standard is not very particular. Standard is not giving you any mandatory requirement related to that documentation, so you as an organization will be deciding about that documentation. Now, why I said in the beginning that this clause is not taken seriously and this clause is not being effectively implemented in most of the organizations, because during my auditing career, I have seen in most of the organizations, people are just trying to fulfill the requirement of ISO 9001, and they're establishing quality objectives just to justify that they are implementing this requirement. So those quality objectives are not basically the quality objectives as expected from this particular clause, because this particular clause is a wonderful clause. If you implement it effectively, definitely I can guarantee you that this will bring a lot of improvement within your organization, but you need to understand it correctly and you need to implement it correctly. First of all, when we say that the quality objectives shall be consistent with the quality policy, most of the organizations, most of the people, they don't realize what exactly it means. The quality policy says, if you go back to clause 5.2, quality policy says that the quality policy must be defining the framework for setting quality objectives. And who is defining basically the quality policy? Quality policy should be defined by the top management. Top management who is having the right vision to define the quality policy. Top management knows their product, top management knows their organization, top management knows what plans they have for next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Top management knows about the legal bodies, top management knows about the competitor. So top management knows a lot of things which the other people doesn't know within the organization. So they have the right idea about the context of the organization, and accordingly they should define the quality policy. So if somebody else is defining quality policy on their behalf, if management representative is writing the quality policy, or if the quality manager is writing the quality policy, or if the consultant is writing the quality policy, believe me, that quality policy will not be representing the mindset of the top management. So that's where we basically start the problem. We don't give the opportunity to the top management to write the quality policy based upon their vision, their mission, their approach, and their plan. So once they will write the quality policy, because they are aware about their strengths, and because they are aware of the weaknesses, because they are aware of the needs and expectations of interested parties, and because they are aware of their short term and long term plans, they will identify within the policy what are the areas of strengths for them, and they will identify within the policy what are the areas where they feel that the organization is still weak and improvement opportunity is there. And that's where we see the framework of setting quality objectives. When you identified that these are the areas where we need to improve, that means these are the areas where where we are weak at the moment, and we must need to improve in these areas. So that's basically the framework which is expected from the top management for establishing quality objectives, because quality objectives will not be directly established by the top management. So we need to give this opportunity to the top management to define the framework of setting quality objectives within the boundaries of quality policy. So once anybody relevant to that particular area looks at the policy, he realizes that these are the areas where we need improvement, and top management has already identified it, and they can establish quality objectives in those areas. For example, if the competency of workforce is one of the concerns you have, and you want to improve the competency, you define in the policy that this is the area for improvement. Competency of the workforce needs to be improved, and then the relevant people, the relevant department, maybe the HR department or maybe some other department, will look into this requirement, and they will realize that what exactly the top management wants, and they will establish specific quality objectives, the measurable quality objectives they will establish. So once quality objectives will be established in this manner, you will realize that quality objectives will be bringing improvements as per the needs and expectations of the top management. If quality objectives and top management doesn't have any connection, if quality policy and top management doesn't have any connection, believe me, you will not be able to bring any improvement. You might be having quality objectives, and they might be measurable as well, and they might be able to satisfy the third party auditors as well, but they will not be bringing any improvement within the organization. And that's the basic purpose and intention behind the quality objectives. So please understand this reality, that all these clauses are connected with each other. Without the involvement of top management, quality policy has no meaning, because quality policy is a belief of top management. If that belief is given by somebody else and the top management is only signing that belief, it will not serve the purpose. So quality policy must be defined by the top management based upon their own belief and based upon their own vision. Once it is defined, it should provide the framework for setting quality objectives. Not necessary that you will be having objectives in all areas or all functions or all processes. Whatever areas requires improvements and whatever areas are identified within the policy, you should be having the quality objectives in those areas. And once you set the quality objectives in those areas, you make sure that those objectives are measurable. This is one of the requirements, that it should be measurable. And once you set the objectives measurable, you need to make sure that the objectives are monitored properly. Once they are monitored, once they are once you evaluate them, whether you are achieving them or not, you will come to know whether you are on the right track or not. And if you are not on the right track, you are not achieving them, or you have some hindrances in between, you will take appropriate corrective actions. So that's the overall concept. But in this regard, keep in mind, if you want to have live quality objectives which are supporting your quality management system for the purpose of continual improvement, you must be having a live quality policy as well, because the framework will change time to time. The weak areas will change time to time. Maybe this year you are having some areas where you require improvement. Maybe next year it will be different. Maybe these areas will be covered this year, and next year maybe some other areas requiring focus. So keep in mind that quality policy is also a live document, and management should review the circumstances regularly, and they should upgrade the quality policy so the quality objectives will be more meaningful, and they will be able to produce results. So this is it about quality objectives. If you have any further queries, or if you require any further clarifications related to this subject, because I'm sure many people will disagree with me, and many people will believe that we are implementing the clause of quality objective for very very long time, and you are saying that we are not implementing it effectively. But this is my honest opinion. If you have something to say about it, write it in the comment. If you have any questions, any queries, please raise it in the comment, and I will try my level best to answer you. Clause 6.3 is about planning of changes, and this is also one of the clauses which is being neglected by the people, especially by the people who are implementing it and the people who are auditing this particular clause. This is a new clause in ISO 9001. Previously, this particular subject was not directly addressed in ISO 9001. In 2015 version, this is the first time when we have seen this particular requirement related to planning of changes. Let's see first what exactly the standard requires from you, and then we will discuss, when I say that it is not being effectively implemented, why I say that. So let's see what exactly the standard says first. When the organization determines the need for changes to the quality management system, the changes shall be carried out in a planned manner. The organization shall consider the purpose of the changes and their potential consequences, the integrity of the quality management system, the availability of resources, the allocation and reallocation of responsibilities and authorities. So, why do I say that this clause is not treated properly by all the people, whether it is implementers or the auditors? Because in many cases, I have seen that the organizations are not having any concrete mechanism for addressing these type of changes, quality management system changes. They are not having any procedure, they are not having any defined mechanism. And when you inquire about it, they would say that because this particular clause does not specifically talk about a procedure, does not talk about a mandatory documentation requirement. So why we need to have one? So it's a long debate. I already discussed that how the documentation philosophy is changed from 1987 version to 2015 version. So I have discussed it many time, and you can go and see in my previous videos as well. I will not go in further detail regarding that argument that this particular clause doesn't require a documented procedure, so why we should have one. But even those companies which are having a documented, well-defined, structured mechanism for planning for changes, even those places I have seen that the changes are not handled properly, and the essence of this particular clause is completely missing. So they are having a procedure which says that whenever a change is identified, it will be documented on this particular form, and then it will be reviewed, and then we will identify the actions and all, and the record will be maintained. But when you go into the details of those changes which they are incorporating, they are very very few. Like in last 1 year, if you would like to see what changes you have done and what where you implemented this particular procedure, you will find one or two places where there will be, just for the sake of creating some record, this particular procedure might have been implemented. But what about the actual management system changes which are happening every now and then? You are changing the responsibilities of the people. You are somebody is having certain responsibilities, now you're sending him to another department, you are bringing another guy from this department. Now there will be, definitely these changes will be affecting the quality management system. The new guy which is coming to this particular function might not be competent on all the processes, and he might be requiring some actions to make sure that those processes which are under his responsibilities, which are having some quality related requirements, how to run those functions, and what sort of actions are needed, that is completely ignored. Then you are merging departments, you are merging functions. One function is in one department and now it is going to the other department. A lot of documentation changes is happening there. You are not considering that change as a change of quality management system, but this change will be having a drastic impact on your quality management system, and there will be many processes which will be neglected in between. Then similarly, you are basically changing documents, modification of documents. Now documents, when we talk about, let's say you are having a procedure, and that procedure is defining, let's say, 10, 15, 20, 100 controls, because procedures are basically written to define your controls, and control is defined based upon certain reasoning, like either there is a process, and to achieve the desired output of that process, you have established some controls and defined within the procedure, or at the beginning, in clause 6.1, you have identified a risk or opportunity, and to avail the opportunity and avoid the risk, you have defined the control, and you have incorporated into this procedure. Now once you are updating this procedure, once you are reviewing this procedure, once you are eliminating some controls from the procedures, you are not basically considering those risks which were considered at the beginning, and those processes which were considered at the beginning, and procedures are modified without considering the consequences. Similarly, I have seen in many cases that within the departmental procedure, if some thing is there, a new manager will come and he will raise the question, why we are doing this activity, why we are developing this report, why we are doing this. And because the subordinates are not having any answer, because the subordinates are not aware how this procedure is structured and how this procedure is written, and how the process output was considered at the beginning, and how the risks were considered at the beginning, they are not aware. So when this question is asked from them, they don't have any answer. And when they don't have any answer, the new manager will ask you to eliminate this particular activity from your process. And once you eliminate your activity from the process, you are basically lacking one control which you established for a good reason. So my point is, this clause is neglected in most of the organization. It's a very important clause. Every change which is having an impact on the quality management system needs to be reviewed from the point of view of potential consequences. And once you identify the consequences, then you need to identify the actions to avoid those consequences. At the same time, when you are thinking about a change, you need to make sure that the integrity of quality management system is maintained. When one function is going from one department or one organization to the other organization, you need to make sure that whatever responsibilities under these functions, for the quality management system, what will happen to those responsibilities during the transition phase, how they will be fulfilling these responsibilities, or are they going to give these responsibilities to some other department in a more transparent manner, so that integrity of quality management system all the time must be maintained. This is one of the requirement in this particular clause. And then logically speaking, you should be identifying what resources will be required, and you will be allocating or reallocating the responsibilities and authorities. So please take this clause seriously. This is extremely important clause, and it is having a major impact on quality management system. So we will be ending our today's discussion here at this particular clause 6.3, and we will be starting our discussion in the next episode about clause number 7, which is support. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next episode.